And our topic for today, the 21 Sales Core Competencies, is one of my favorite sessions to deliver. And the reason that it's one of my favorite sessions to deliver is so much of this topic has to do or connects well with a belief that we at Anthony Cole Training Group have. And here's the belief. I'm going to go ahead and type it in the chat box just to get you in the habit of looking there. But I'll also verbalize it. Being great at sales is a choice. Just curious whether you agree or disagree with that. In fact, if you'd like to type back, if you agree, you can type agree. If you disagree, type disagree, and that's okay. If you disagree, not everybody sees the world the way I see it. And I just believe, and as a training and coaching company, we believe that that's a choice. You have the ability to become great. I think a lot of people get hung up on there's an agree. There's one. Another one, Lindsay, agreeing. Now look at this, the chat box is rolling. I just think that's a choice that you can make. I get a little frustrated on occasion with people like, well, I just wasn't born to do this. I'm not cut out to be a salesperson. In fact, some of that got unpacked in recent years with the whole introverted, extroverted deal, where people used to think that, well, the only way to be great at sales is I have to be an extrovert. Well, about half the world or so are introverted. I married an introvert. And if we believe that, then we would have to believe that half of the world could not be really good, if not great at sales, and I just reject that thesis. So that's why I love this topic so much. You will detect a lot of passion for our discussion today because it just connects so well with that theme that being good at sales is a choice. Here's another thing I believe. I believe that good salespeople are almost automatically good learners. So that connects well, right? If good salespeople, if being good at sales is a choice, those salespeople who become great are also really great at learning. Good salespeople are pretty decent learners. It is a learned behavior. And so we're going to look at these 21 things that create what I would term the ideal salesperson. And it's really all about the DNA of an effective relationship manager. I'm going to use that term generically, if you'll permit me today. Perhaps in your organization you call them account reps or account executives or business development officers or relationship managers. Just to make it easy on everybody, I'm going to use the term RM or relationship manager when we're talking about a salesperson. And these 21 things, I want you to remember that number. That's a good number if you go to Vegas, 21. It's also a good number for our session today because those 21 things come to us in three different categories or three different buckets. The first bucket that we'll talk about today, the will to sell. And the will to sell has 5 components in it. And then we're going to talk about that middle bucket, that middle category, sales DNA. And that bucket has 6 components to it. And then finally, out to the right, we're going to talk about selling competencies. And that bucket or category has 10 things. So 5 in will to sell, 6 in sales DNA, and 10 in selling competencies. And for the most part, here's another thing that I think is exciting about this topic. For the most part, almost all of the 21 components can be taught. There are a couple that can't, and I will be certain to note those for you. But the good news is at least 18, 19 or so of the 21 things, they can be taught. They can be illustrated. What's that comment I made a minute ago? Great salespeople are great learners. And so you can learn these behaviors, but I will be clear to specify the 2 or 3 that in my judgment just can't be taught. They can be demonstrated. They can be talked about, but they just can't be taught. So let's dive right into the first category, the will to sell. And the will to sell has 5 components to it. They're on the screen: desire, commitment, motivation, responsibility, and outlook. Now, for those of you that are using the chat box, here's your first quiz question of the day. We've noted these in colors. That really doesn't mean a lot, but the fact that we are using puzzle pieces is significant. And if you've been around our firm, you know that when we have a picture on a screen, it almost always is pointing to a greater truth. We're trying to teach you something, and for those visuals of you out there that learn and put things together visually, you'll probably get it. Why do you think we're using puzzle pieces to illustrate this? I'll give you just a minute to respond. I wish I had a prize for the first few of you that would chat here. Why puzzle pieces? What's the significance? Yeah, Lindsay, they all fit together, and it is all connected. And if you take one of these out, you start to go down a pretty troubling road. And if you take a couple of them out, you're in big trouble. And Alicia, I agree. You've got to have all of those if you're going to make a whole picture. To your point, you've got to have all of those if you're going to become great. And we believe, one of the fundamental beliefs we have as a training company, there are a few things. We've taken a stake and we've drilled it pretty deep into the ground, and we're not going to be moved from it. And one of those stakes, one of those core beliefs is that we were put here on this earth to have extraordinary lives, to make an extraordinary difference, to make an extraordinary difference in our communities, in our schools, in our places of employment, and for salespeople. Since that's who's on the webinar today, I believe that salespeople have every right to have an extraordinary career as a salesperson. And when you take one of these things out, you start to compromise their ability to become great. So that's the whole picture. Back to Alicia's comment, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into them. It starts with desire, and this is pretty simple. I would define desire as someone who has a burning passion for success. Deep within them, the fire is burning for them to be a successful salesperson. And because of that, they set high standards. Those standards are non-negotiable. Their actions in their day-to-day week. Think about prospecting. These are the people who come into the office and they prospect. That would be the one thing they would not leave undone. There might be some other things that were left undone. They might leave some paperwork undone. Perhaps that irritates somebody who's waiting on said paperwork. But they have set standards for themselves, and they want to be a success. They embrace challenges, and they take ownership for their results. They don't make excuses. They have that positive outlook. They're thinking, hey, if it is to be, then it's up to me. And in your organization, think about successful salespeople. Think about the men or women who consistently hit quota or hit their objectives for the year. You're probably going to see somebody who has that strong, burning desire to be a success. And right off the bat, here's one of the 21 things that you really can't teach. Remember Gatorade from a few years ago? They had that advertising campaign. Their marketing approach was centered on the question, Gatorade, is it in you? Well, that's what this is like, desire. It's either in your people or it's not. And if it's not, it can be a real challenge to coach them. If it's not in there, how do you help them? It can be very, very perplexing. So this is one of the things that cannot be taught. You can demonstrate it if you're a leader, and we've got some sales leaders, some sales managers, VPs of sales on the call. You can model it. You can talk about it. But boy, if you get somebody who just doesn't have it, it can be a real challenge. The same is true for the second of the 21 things, commitment. And salespeople who have a high measure or high level of commitment, they take risks, they will fail, and they'll get right back up and they'll take the risk again. They are always achieving goals. They challenge themselves. They challenge those around them. They will ask the difficult questions of prospects because they're interested in getting to what we would call the unvarnished truth. What's the ground truth? Do they really have a chance to win an opportunity they're pursuing? They want to know it. They want to know it early. They confirm it often, and they're very coachable. I would use, and I'll type in the chat box here, an acronym for you. There we go. I'm typing privately here just to Cheryl. Let me make certain that I send that to everyone. Here we go. So let me try that again. WIT to everyone. It's an acronym, and it has application for commitment. And that acronym stands for whatever it takes. Now, I'm gonna put some caveats onto that. It means that people with a high level of commitment do whatever it takes to win business within legal, moral, and ethical standards. Okay, so I'm not talking about, hey, let's just go do whatever it takes. Okay, no, we're going to be ethical. We're going to obey the law. We're going to do things that we can defend and we can look our colleagues in the eye. We're not going to steal leads. We're not going to round the corners here. But whatever it takes to win business within legal, moral, and ethical standards, those are salespeople with a high level of commitment. They do the things, quite frankly, that they don't feel like doing consistently. They always take the harder right than the easier, softer, or more convenient wrong. And these are the people that stay in the office and make their calls. And this is another one. Like desire before it, it's really hard, if not impossible, to teach this. And when you hire somebody, you're hoping, right, that I hope my candidate that I've hired has a high level of desire and a high level of commitment. And you can talk about commitment, and you yourself can be committed as a sales leader, but you just can't make somebody care. Another one of the components of will to sell is outlook. And these are people, they just have that learned optimism. They're positive about the company. They're positive about what's going on. Generally, they're positive because they know that day in and day out, they're doing the things they need to do to be successful. Some of you might have heard us talk previously on one of these webinars about success formulas. And those are the things that, done day in and day out, week in and week out, will lead a salesperson to have a successful sales year. And these people, their outlook is generally positive because they know they're doing the right things. They're fired up. They are, think of it this way, these are the glass half full and never the glass half empty. But they've determined that they're in charge of their success. Think about the people you work with. Maybe you had a mentor that you learned from, and he or she was a very successful salesperson. Chances are they were very courageous and they had that positive outlook. And they've just learned optimism is a trait that marks them. And here's another function or component of will to sell. Salespeople who do not make excuses. They take responsibility. I believe that excuses are the nails that are used to build houses of failure. A friend of mine is fond of saying that excuses are crutches for the incompetent. Regardless of which one of those you like, at the end of the day, a successful salesperson, let's keep the theme, a great salesperson. Remember, being great at sales is a choice. Great salespeople take responsibility. They set high standards of performance, and they don't blame. They don't play the blame game. And when they don't win a piece of business, they have a bad week or they have a bad quarter, they first look inward. Here's who they don't blame. They don't blame the economy. They don't blame the competition. They don't blame the prospect. And that is the best definition that I've ever heard of accountability. And we talk a lot about that as a coaching firm, but accountability is simply owning the outcome that you created. As a salesperson, you're going to have an outcome today. Will you own it? You're going to have an outcome this week. Tomorrow is Friday. I look at my calendar. I'll be at Friday the 13th. You're going to have a week. You're going to have a month. The year is almost out. Will you own the outcome that you created? Great salespeople always own the outcome that they created. And finally, they're motivated. Great salespeople they're self-motivated. You don't have to remind them that prospecting is important. They just make calls and they see people and they make connections on LinkedIn. They're a self-manager. They work hard. They're very consistent day to day and week to week, and they're also able, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, they're able to recover from rejection. And they have plans. Those plans are in writing. Those plans are tied to a success formula. They have created their dream list, and they are motivated to pursue it. And quite frankly, they're working for your company because you provide fuel for their dream engine. They have dreams. beyond just their business goal. They're things they want to buy, places they want to visit, people they want to take care of, causes they want to contribute to. And they're motivated, and their desire is high, and their commitment is high. And so those are the puzzle pieces that fit that first category of will to sell. Now here's the second category. So I'm assuming for the rest of our discussion as we talk about salespeople that they've got that desire, which is a passion to win. They have commitment, whatever it takes within legal, moral, and ethical boundaries. I'm assuming they're motivated, they've got a good outlook, and they're not going to make excuses. Now, those are 5 huge assumptions. Because I don't care how gifted you are, I don't care how many people you know. If you don't have a passion to do this job of being a relationship manager, being a salesperson, if you're not committed, if you're not recognizing, there are going to be some pretty rough days. If you're not willing to fight that fight day in and day out, week in and week out, it's just not likely that you're going to have a high degree of success. But I'm going to assume that those 5 components of the will to sell are there. Now we have to talk about sales DNA. And here's how I've often referred to this. There are, if you'll permit me, there are 6 viruses that can infect a salesperson, and each one of them will limit the ability of the salesperson to succeed. And they're on the screen before you. We're going to do the same thing that we did with will to sell. I'm going to give you the visual of all 6, and then we're going to unpack them and apply them to the job of a salesperson. So in the bottom left-hand corner, need for approval. That means it is so hugely important to the salesperson that the prospect approves of them. They want people to like them. They worry to an excessive level about whether or not people will like them. That's one thing. That's one virus. Here's another virus, bicycle. Now, that's not bicycle, okay? That's not the thing you rode to school when you're in elementary school, but bicycle, and that simply means, or refers to our belief that most people, there are clearly some exceptions, but most people have a tendency to sell the way they buy. Their selling approach is almost an exact mirror of their buying approach. And what that means is if you're a think it over and you're a cautious buyer and you're slow and methodical and you got to read and research and talk to your mom or dad or your friends, read 18 reviews, consult your pastor or your priest or your rabbi, if that's how you buy, that's probably going to line up with how you sell, and you'll have a tendency to accept excessive delays and stalls and objections. Beliefs, the third element, the third virus, if you're going with my lingo or jargon here, your beliefs, the things you believe in your head about people, prospects, selling, asking questions, and you learn these from a lot of different inputs. Your mom and dad taught you. You learned them from a boss at a former job. But these are the tapes that you play in your head. I have to be careful about using the tape analogy because most people on this webinar today are probably not old enough to remember tapes. If you are, just tell me in the chat box, do you remember a cassette deck in a car? Maybe there's somebody here who might even remember an 8-track. There we go. There's a sure do remember. You won't see many cassettes in cars today. But just think of it that way. Beliefs are the tapes that you listen to over and over. Absolutely, Alicia remembers. There we go, 8-track. That's a great memory. Had an Oldsmobile 98 that had an 8-track in it. I can still picture that car. But we listened to those tapes as kids, and now as adults, we listen to different tapes, but they play in our head, and they either encourage us to do courageous things or they discourage us from doing courageous things. Some salespeople have money issues right there in the middle of the screen. They're just not comfortable talking about money. That's what that could mean. It also could mean they're okay talking about money, but they have a low threshold for what a lot of money is. And if that's the case, they'll always get nervous. They'll always put off the conversation. And here's if you looked at salespeople who struggle with money issues, one of the common denominators is if you dissected the losses they have in their pipeline, They generally either never find out about budget, or they find out too late about budget, or they just don't drill deep enough into the subject of budget. They just don't have that meaningful conversation because that's something that they're fearful of. Number 5, handling rejection. Now, if you struggle with rejection, sales might not be the best career for you unless you're willing to learn to handle it. Because what did I say when we opened up the webinar today? Being great at sales is a personal choice. And I have known and had the privilege of coaching, as our firm has throughout the last 25 or so years. There are salespeople who struggle with rejection, but they finally learn how to deal with it. And typically, the light bulb goes off on rejection when they understand they're not being rejected. Their idea, their proposal is being rejected. Now is not the right time, so whatever the form the rejection may take, I mean, that's going to be a part of your sales life. We had our monthly sales meeting here as an organization on Monday, and we looked at some of our losses. And that doesn't discourage me, nor should it discourage you. We should have losses. I mean, I'd like to know why. I don't want to see us making repeating the same mistakes, but if you're an active prospector, you should be finding out from people that it doesn't need to go any further. That's a sign of great activity. We want those losses to come early as opposed to late. One of my favorite sayings is, it's not a sin to lose a sale, but it is a sin to lose a sale late for a reason you should have known about earlier. That's handling rejection and controlling emotions. Some salespeople, I'm not talking about getting angry and red-faced, but their post-call review, they get in the car after a meeting with a prospect and they have regrets. They didn't ask the question they wanted to ask. They didn't answer a question they were asked in the right way, and they leave the meeting full of should-haves and could-haves and regrets. And typically that's a sign of a lack of pre-call planning. So let's just go through those real quickly. And here's the great news. So I said desire and commitment. There's not a lot you can do with a salesperson like that, but everything on that previous screen, just to back up so we have an accurate understanding of when I say everything, all 6 elements, all 6 viruses can be cured. It's all coachable. Assuming that you follow that flow chart on the left side of the screen where we talk about promoting change. And there are a lot of steps there, okay? And I'm not going to read them to you because I think you're big boys and big girls, and you can read them on your own. But I will point out, in the middle of the column on the left side of the screen, nothing will happen. So the good news, it's all coachable, but here's the rough reality, okay? The salesperson has to agree the problem needs to be fixed. And typically they agree that the problem has to be fixed because they recognize the outcome is too painful. And in that regard, if you're a sales leader on this call and you're thinking about your salespeople, they're just like prospects who are confronted every day with proposals, and they have to evaluate the pain of changing and the pain of not changing. The same thing is true for your people. They are evaluating the pain of changing, letting themselves be coached and reconfiguring their DNA, but they're also thinking about, well, maybe I don't need to change. I mean, maybe okay is okay. That is a personal choice once again. It's unrealistic to think that sales DNA will be reversed or reconfigured unless the sales professional agrees it needs to be fixed. And they will only think about fixing it if they think, you know what, I just can't have another quarter, I just can't have another year. I have to do something differently. So let's wheel through those pretty quickly here and take that deeper dive. So need for approval. These are salespeople who focus on being friends with the prospect. Okay, they generally don't prospect consistently. They have low closing ratios. Their sales cycles tend to last longer than others. They have opportunities there in the pipeline that don't move. Okay, why? Because asking the tough question, challenging the veracity of the opportunity, that comes with some risk. And the need for approval salesperson would say, here's the risk. The prospect might not like me. Think about going out on a call and maybe you're watching, you're thinking about one of your reps and you're thinking, boy, they always ask the safe, wimpy questions. They might say, hey, Rick, if you saw something that would put your company in a better position, you'd do it, wouldn't you, Rick? Cheryl, if you saw a dramatic savings for the same thing you're buying today, I mean, that would be something that would be interesting to you. Those are safe questions. Here's the problem. They're wimpy questions. And that's the application here of need for approval. They have lots of get-to-know-you meetings. They come back and you ask them, hey, Alicia, how'd the meeting go? And Alicia says, oh, the meeting went great. I mean, well, they really liked me. And these people tend to avoid conflict. Now, I'm not asking you to go out and just, go drum up conflict, but there is a moment, there are actually moments, plural, in the evolution of a sales opportunity where a salesperson who's making that decision to be great, not average, is going to have to challenge a few things. And here's the key. They do it because they figured out it's okay to challenge the statements people make and the positions they take, but it's never okay to challenge a person. That would make you a jerk. But it is okay to ask permission to double-click, to weigh in with a different perspective. Those are the kinds of meetings that prospects want to have. So that's need for approval. They also trust prospects too much. What I mean is when the prospect says, well, I'm the only decision maker. Okay. You know what? Money or budget's not going to be a problem. Okay. We're going to have this in place by November 1st. Okay. I think President Reagan was the president who said what? Trust but verify. Need for approval, in my judgment, is the #1 killer of sales careers. Let's go on and talk about another aspect of sales DNA, those 6 viruses. Buy cycle here. I mentioned earlier, these people, they tend to sell the way they buy. And because of that, they're very vulnerable to prospects who buy the same way that they do. Very vulnerable. So if I'm presenting to Lindsay and Lindsay tells me this is a big decision and Lindsay says, we're looking at several options, can't get it wrong, going to check out that, going to talk to so-and-so, I'll say, Lindsay, I understand. Of course I understand. Because Lindsay is doing nothing but buying the way I buy. These salespeople who are affected by buy cycle, they always want to educate. They love educating, making people smarter. And I'm not opposed to that. But boy, taken to an extreme, it's a significant problem. These people will always sacrifice margin. They always want to rely on low price. They always accept TIO, think it over. They're filled with one of my colleagues here. He talks about they're filled with hopium. They're hoping for something, and they're hopeful they'll get the deal. And they almost promote. Not only do they accept the prospect shopping around, they almost seem to encourage it. And their belief is it makes sense to get competitive bids for decisions. And there are only 2 solutions here. One is you can change the way you make personal buying decisions. I'm not going to ask you to do it. I don't ask the salespeople we coach to do it. Yeah, I will say from the front of the room in a training session, it's none of my business how people make their personal purchases. None of my business. But here's the deal. There are only 2 ways to fix it. One, you can just change and you can decide to be a quick buyer now, be a quicker decision maker. That's just not plausible. It's not likely. I mean, whether you're 20, 30, 60, 70, it doesn't matter. You've been buying that way for years, and quite frankly, it's probably served you pretty well. Remember your mom and dad saying, hey, don't ever overpay for something. Don't buy the first thing you see. I get it, okay? But that's one way. You can just decide on the spur of the moment, like from this day forward, I will not be affected by a non-supportive buy cycle. Here's a more likely outcome or solution. Become a hypocrite. Now, we don't like hypocrites because hypocrites are people who say one thing and do another, but in our training, we always give salespeople, you can be a hypocrite here. Because just as I've said to you how you buy, it's none of your business, it's also none of the prospect's business how you buy. So if you want to continue to be that plotter, that methodical shopper, get the options, call your rabbi, priest, pastor, talk to mom or dad, whatever, go ahead and do it, but do not accept that behavior from prospects. Challenge it. It's okay. This is maybe the one time it's okay to be a hypocrite. Here's another: beliefs. So in that middle category, sales DNA, the 6 viruses that will affect you as a salesperson. What you think in your head is those are very powerful tapes. Back to the 8-track for just a minute. And here's the deal. Belief will always trump skill. If you look at the middle, we've got somebody here, we got a guy in a suit, and he's trying to be like Superman and leap this building in a single bound and go on to a new world and start behaving differently. Maybe he's had this crazy guy, Mark Trinkle, in front of the room, and he's been trained and he's been coached, and now he is armed with all of these great, courageous questions and techniques and strategies. Hey, folks, it doesn't matter, because belief will always trump the skill. Our sales coaches here are really good at what they do. But there's one opponent we cannot defeat, and it's a negative, non-supportive belief system in the salesperson. What they believe will always be more powerful than the skills that we teach. And wherever and for whatever reason, they've just accumulated some beliefs in their head. We were together in person, and I'm not going to ask you to use the chat box here, but I'd say, Maxwell House always, how's that go? Good to the last drop. The great Dr. Martin Luther King famously said, I have a dream. Bob Seger said, just take those old records off the shelf. I'll sit and listen to them by myself. In the 70s or the 80s, that little old lady in that commercial goes to the counter at a hamburger chain. It was called Wendy's, and she asks, what question? Where's the beef? Now, you can remember those things because you recorded them in your head. You thought, I might need that one day. Well, salespeople have also recorded certain beliefs that they hold to be true about what's appropriate conduct. What are the appropriate questions to ask a prospect? The prospect is always right. It's okay if they shop around. I've got no choice. I've got to educate them. And then one of their other beliefs, and it is incredibly damaging and destructive, bottom right-hand corner. Let's think about the application of this. You're on a call. You know what? People buy from people they like. And if they don't like me, then they're not going to buy from me. Wrong answer. Here's what we know. 25 some odd years of experience. Another stake we're going to put in the ground. People don't buy from people they like. Prospects buy from people they respect. And what do they respect? They respect their ability to help the prospect solve a business problem. Money issues, I mentioned this before, they're not comfortable with money. They might have a low threshold for what a lot of money is. I can remember as a kid, just middle school, our neighbors come home in a new car. My dad and I walk across the front lawn. I go, hi, Mr. Byerly, man, that's a great car. I'm just a kid. I don't know any better. And I said, what did that cost? And my father said, Bob, we'll be right back. He took me around to the back porch, and he and I had a meeting of the minds where he made it clear to me, don't ever ask about money again. Well, that became a part of my belief system. Okay, so that's the power of beliefs. In that case, my father, he taught me other lessons which are beyond the scope of this broadcast. We'll do those later in the year. But are they comfortable talking about money? Are they money motivated? Is it an important part of the conversation that they have with prospects? And here is another one that we've talked about already. Are you gonna be comfortable with rejection? Calls and emails go unreturned. Are you going to take that personally? And David, thank you for joining us. We'll be certain to get you that recording. Hey, they're not going to reply as quickly as you would like them to. In fact, they may never reply. They might ignore you. Do not be fazed by that. Do have dreams. Ask the tough questions. Be a great qualifier. Sort out the deals you have a chance of getting as opposed to the ones you don't. But don't think for a second that they're rejecting you. That's one of the 21 core competencies. Can you handle rejection? Listen, I don't expect people to love it, but I do expect, and I see in great salespeople, They might lose an opportunity. They come right back in. Okay, they don't have to go away to a spa for 2 days and get their mind right again. Maybe they go have a beverage after work and their mind is right and they're back at it because they know it's not them that's being rejected. And then finally, emotional involved. We talked about this as well, right? They're inconsistent in executing the sales process. They didn't pre-call plan, and pre-call plan just simply means identifying the questions that they're going to ask the prospect and how the prospect responds. It means taking some time. Well, what questions might I get from the prospect? And if I do get them, how will I respond? Because they didn't do that, they get emotionally involved and they get nervous. And they get frustrated, and they get excited, and they start taking shortcuts, and they don't do a complete job of fact-finding. And because of that, and they're not following the sales process, they get in the car, they leave the prospect, and it's like, well, you know what, I should have done a better job of that. I could have handled that question better. And the antidote, the remedy, the cure, the pill that if you want to get cured of this virus, then commit to a disciplined pre-call planning process. So we've covered the 5, just keeping score here. One more piece to look at. We've covered the 5 pieces of will to sell. We've covered the 6 pieces of sales DNA. And let's end with the 10 selling competencies. In the interest of time, there are 10 of them on the screen. I'm only going to talk about 5 of them, but they're the most important 5. So here we go. Now, beyond how you're wired and your makeup and your desire, all that stuff, now let's talk about those skill sets, those things you have to do as a salesperson. Number 1, you got to hunt. Okay, and great salespeople, they've made that decision, right? They prospect well, and they prospect very, very consistently. They have no need for approval. They schedule meetings with prospects. They recover from rejection. Think about maintaining a full pipeline. They're not a perfectionist. They're not going to do everything great. They don't handle everything as necessarily as good as they could. But sales is intended to be like jazz. It's not intended to be perfect. Stop worrying about that. That's a finding that will always limit your ability to have the level of success you're entitled to. Well, I won't use that technique, I won't use that skill, I won't ask that question until I've practiced it over and over again and I'm perfect. You stop, just go do it and you'll get better at it. But they get through to the targeted clients. They know who they're looking for. They get all kinds of referrals from clients and centers of influence in their network. They're active on the use of social selling tools. Think about LinkedIn. They go to networking events because that's where those people tend to hang out. But they don't have to be told to hunt. They just do it. They do it well, and they do it consistently. Number 2, they're great at relationship building. They quickly develop rapport. Now, if we were in a session, I would ask this question, hey, what does it mean to achieve bonding and rapport? As a training and coaching firm, here's our belief. That's not something you're in the middle of doing. You either did it or not. You either got it or you didn't. And bonding and rapport typically means, here's what training participants tell me. Breaking the ice, a little bit of chit-chat, get them comfortable. Here's how we define it. Bonding and rapport means proving you belong in a seat at the table. One more time, bonding and rapport, and the relationship builder, it means proving you belong at a seat at the table because you got something serious to talk about and you've got solutions for their problems, and that's what you're there to focus on. You either do that or you don't do that. You build strong relationships. These are the salespeople. Think about the salespeople you work with. They get customers following them. So they land at your company, and inside the first 30 to 60 days, you look over across the cubicle and you go, holy cow, Anna's getting all these deals already. I mean, these are people she had at her previous employer, and now they're over here. Yeah, that's a sign that Anna was a great relationship builder because customers are following her. And here's another thing to consider. Okay, they're out there, they're making friends, they're easy to talk to, they build relationships, but here's the deal. You know how they build them? On the currency of value. And in the great book, Go Give or Sell More, there's that line in the book that goes like this. Sales results, new business, new wins, whatever. Sales results are always the echo of value. Sales results, when you win, if you look at a win list, a win report, that's a lagging indicator. Okay, that's stuff that happened, and the wins occurred earlier because the salesperson was out there unaffected by those 6 viruses, high desire, high commitment, asking the tough questions, but adding value. Because that's why people buy, because they respect the value you provide. They don't buy because they like you. It's okay to be likable. We certainly don't want you to go out and be a jerk, but relationship builders, they build value. Consultative seller. For my money, this is the highest art of selling. I've called it the last frontier almost of sales training because this is prized by sales organizations around the country, in fact, around the world. And these people, they're consultative in their approach. They're not showing up and throwing up. They ask questions. That's a big part of the consultative seller skill set, but they're asking lots of questions. They're asking the tough, challenging questions. They're able to listen and ask to the prospects and ask questions with ease. They stay in the moment, probably because they pre-call plan. They uncover compelling reasons for people to buy from them. They don't take things for granted. They've built strong relationships. They've added value. And then at the bottom right, next to the last bullet point, they present at the right time. Okay. They do not chase rabbits that they can't catch. They present at exactly the right time. And you know when the right time is, folks? When the time is right, when you've talked about a problem, the prospect is compelled and motivated to fix, the right people are in the room, you've had the discussion about the budget, all of that stuff, and they have promised to make a decision when you deliver a proposal. Notice, I didn't say they promised to buy. They promised to make a decision when you deliver your proposal. Then, and only then, is the time right. Think about those other viruses, those 6 pieces of sales DNA, and need for approval, and salespeople, I don't want them to get angry with me, I want them to like me, and they just go ahead and give out the goods. They give away the proposal, and now they're in what we call pitch and chase mode. They've pitched a solution, and now they're chasing to catch the prospect to get them to return phone calls. Selling value over price. Most salespeople can sell as long as they have the lowest price. A little bit harder to find is the sales professional who can sell with a higher price. They're able to sell value. They defend margin. They're comfortable discussing money. They understand about the problems the prospect has. They monetize the problem or the pain the prospect has. They ask, again, not only questions, but they ask lots of them, and they're great questions, and they never feel compelled to quote. They're comfortable with the value, they believe in their value, and they also believe they are appropriately charging for it. And here's the deal, if a prospect doesn't agree with them, then that's okay, they move on to the next opportunity. They also follow a consistent sales process. Just a few more slides for you here. But they have a stage-based, milestone-centric sales process. There are key milestones before an opportunity moves from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4. That process has an adequate sequence, and they follow it consistently. And because it's stage-based, because each step has milestones, you know what? These salespeople, they rarely waste their time. They use, if they have a CRM, they're CRM savvy. They live in their CRM. They strategically use sales scorecards. Sales scorecards are essentially Excel spreadsheets where the salespeople have identified and weighted the key components of when they're successful. What are the key characteristics that define that success? What do the prospects who've made the decision to do business with them, what do they have in common? They look for those core traits or those core components. They use a scorecard, they weight it, and they score their opportunities, but they never, ever deviate from the sales process. They live and are married to that process. So here's my last slide for you. Here's a good visual of the 21 core competencies. just a sample of findings. Let me get that out of the way. Here we go. So here are the 21 things laid out for you. Again, we've got the competencies, all 10 of them. We only talked about 5. We've got sales DNA, and then we've got the will to sell. And what we have the ability to do is to measure how the salespeople in your company score on those 21 things. And we can compare them to the entire population of salespeople. There's about 2 million salespeople who have been measured on these things, and we can show you the top 10%, the bottom 10%. We can compare to the norm or the average in your industry that you sell in, and then we can show you the aggregated or summary scores for your company. And here's my last slide. If you would like to see that, if you would like to grab that information, then all you need to do is email me at mark@anthonycoletraining.com. My cell phone number is below my email address, 513-324-3487. And because of your attendance, your registration for this webinar, and some of you are going to be listening to the recording, so we missed you. But here's the good news. You still can take advantage of this offer as long as you registered for the webinar. If you'd like to see how your people, if you'd like to see how this information plays out for you, all you need to do is drop me an email, mark@anthonycoletraining.com, call me at 513-324-3487, and we can process that information for you. And yes, we mean F-R-E-E, free. Some of you are going to say, well, wait a minute, there's got to be a catch. Yeah, here's the catch. There is no catch. Okay. Our heartbeat as a sales coaching organization is with improving the lives of salespeople. And if doing this will improve their life and improve the trajectory of your company and increase your results, then we're all for it. Maybe you do it and it results in a conversation down the road. I don't care. I just want you to know if you'd like to get this information, we are happy to set it up so you can get it. And you don't owe us a dime, and there's no sudden left turn or right hook coming down the road where we expect you to do Y because we've done X. That's all I can say. It is free. There is no obligation for you. The information can be sent to you. But you got to email me or you have to call me so we can get you set up and going down that road. It's been my privilege to moderate this webinar for you. I wish all of you continued success in your career. If there's anything else, even beyond the offer, that you would like to discuss, that email, that cell phone, I would love to hear from you. If there's anything our firm can do to help you, and that help can take a lot of different forms, as simple as just a question, or you want to run an idea past us, it would be our delight to do that. Have a great day, everybody, and we will be certain to get this recording out to you as quickly as possible. Thanks again.